So you're a big student of compounding.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about it. What skills have you compounded over your career? And talk to me about why compounding is so important.
So I came from the gym business, and probably one of the simplest reoccurring models that people understand. A lot of people don't know about the gym business, especially in the service-based gyms. So like personal training, semi-private training, large group, which is where I came from. That was my bread and butter, is that people cancel all the time. Whereas like a $10 a month membership, it's lower and it tends to be more like a facility usage business than it is actually like a service business. I remember the first time I looked at churn and saw that, I was like, okay, 10% churn, that's the industry average. And then I just did it for a year. And I was like, oh, I lose 70% of my customers every year. That means that basically every month I have to like go hunt, and I never get credit for what I did 3 months ago. And so I wanted to have businesses where I could get credit for the work that I did 5 years ago. To ladder up to the first question you asked, which was, what has been compounding in my life? And skills has been the biggest investment I've made in my entire life. And so, when I first started, I got pretty good at sales. I didn't know anything about it, but I got pretty good at it just from taking 4,000 one-on-one consults in person. I learned enough about the other stuff to have that just not be the limiter. So I learned how to run Facebook ads in 2013. I went to a workshop and somebody taught me how to do it, and that ended up completely changing my life. And that's how I was able to fill all these gyms up later. But then I didn't know how to do like more advanced stuff. So then I paid somebody else to teach me the more advanced stuff. And so what I have noticed is that with each kind of new set of skills that I acquire over time, it just makes the former skills that I learned way more valuable. I like telling the story of Jay-Z as a simple example. It's like, okay, so he had a natural proclivity towards like beats and rhythm. Okay. Then he learns how to rap. Okay. Well, he's got some skill there, but then he learned how to promote. So now that made his rapping skill more valuable. And then he learned how to sign other people on, or create a label, and then he learned how to sign other people on and then promote them. And so all of a sudden he just gets more and more leverage on the original skill set. He still needs to be able to recognize good music from his original days, but learning how to promote on top of that just gave him huge leverage, and then doing it with other people more so.
So just to deconstruct that, let's use Jay-Z. So he's good at beats. So let's say you want to acquire the skill of rapping. How would you go about that? And how do you A, identify the skills needed, and B, acquire those skills?
Well, I'll walk you through something that we like to think about. Everything we do is off the theory of constraints. We say, how do we do more of what's working? And we continue to do more of what's working until something else gets in the way of us doing more of what's working. And then we ask the question, why can't we do it? And the answer to that question is typically the constraint. And then all of our resources will get deployed towards relieving that constraint. And then we go back to doing as much of that thing that made us money as possible.
And if you don't know how to relieve that constraint, that's your lack of skill. And then you gain that skill. Let's say you have to gain that skill. Let's say you have to become a promoter. How would you go about it?
I'll do a microcosm of this. So the ads thing I was saying earlier, I didn't know how to run national ad campaigns. So I knew how to run them locally, but then when we wanted to scale Gym Launch, I was like, I got to learn how to do this nationally. I have no idea. How do you target gym owners? And so I got on the phone with agency owners, and I didn't have a ton of money at the time. And so I just said, hey, can you run my ads, but also show me what you're doing? And they all said no. And so finally, I was like on the 6th call, the guy said no. And I was like, dude, it's America. Like, just name a price. Like, what would it take? And that's one of my favorite questions is, I was like,
that's a good line.
Yeah. What would it take? I use that line all the time. Like, what would it take to get a deal done? What would it take for us to do 5 YouTube videos a week that are 10 out of 10 quality? And then we can just decide the trade-off if it's worth it. That particular agency owner said, I don't sell my time, but I would do it for $750 an hour. And I was like, okay. And so I bought 8 hours from him for $6,000. And I showed up to every call with like notes and recordings. And I needed to learn how to do this. We go document, demonstrate, duplicate. So I have to figure out the checklist of all the things they do. What are the behaviors? And then you do it in front of me, and then I do it in front of you. And then as long as I can duplicate, then I have the skill now. I learned this from Layla, was when we want to learn a new skill, we also interview people for the skill. Because usually it's a company that has a void. We'll get on the phone with 10 or 20 people with the intention, obviously, of hiring, somebody who's really good. But if you talk to 10 or 20 people that are all like senior director of, customer success, you say, hey, walk me through some of the metrics that you track for this. And then how do you move these metrics? So what activities do you do to change them? My belief is that you can tell someone's skill by the quantity and quality of metrics they track. Easier thing is sales, because most people who are listening get what that is. If I talk to a sales director and I say, first off, how do you make this company more money? Now, if they say something like, well, I'm going to increase sales, it's like, no, but you're not going to be on the phone. So how do you increase sales? And so then it's like you start to put a little bit of pressure. And then, because if they can't tie the activities that they do to revenue generation on the interview, then for sure they're not going to do any work for you. Yeah. And some guys are like, I'm going to rile up the team, and I'm going to, get them excited. We're going to do some training. That's not going to be a good sales manager, right? if someone says, well, I'm going to look at, the offer percentage that we have, I'm going to look at our scheduling rates, I'm going to look at our show rates. If show rates are low, I'm going to do this. If offer rates are low, we're going to look at marketing, make sure the messaging's right. If we're struggling with whatever, a specific obstacle, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to isolate that obstacle and then we're going to drill it. I'm going to look at that particular reps closing percentage and make sure that it gets up to KPI. If he starts breaking down all of these pieces, then I'm like, okay, not only is he tracking the metrics, but he knows how to affect them. And so then also when I talk to 4 other guys, and I get onto the 4th call, that first guy might have said something that I didn't know about. But when I go to the 4th call, I'm like, so what do you think about this?
Yeah.
And then how they respond to it. Right. I get better and better at it. And so then I start to know what to look for. And then if I still have no idea, then that's when I'll pay somebody. I mean, I'm still the biggest fan of one-on-one tutoring. It's like out of vogue now, but I'll pay anybody to learn something. I offered someone $350,000 for dinner. He said, no, I offered $250,000 and then we offered $350,000. He was like, fine. He didn't even take the money. He's like, I'll just meet you for dinner because you're so desperate. But I wanted to understand branding. Because it was this thing that I realized that I didn't understand. So in Gym Launch, it was very much an arbitrage business, like a media arbitrage business. And so everything was quant based. And that was kind of like how it was all I cared about was just like, what are CTRs? What are CPMs? What's our cost per lead? What schedule, what show, what's close rate? And that's all I cared about was just blowing as much money through that funnel as possible.